think no one has ever talked about this topic before, or people probably talked about this topic, but um, whatever. Anyway, K-pop and the N-word. That is the name of today's subject.
At this beat, and niggas who be ballin', know this shit ain't cheap. And if your ass is ballin', shit is obsolete. What? Freaking fly, if you can't fight, so that's the best. West side nigga comes the most, the most. I feel like flow, for sure. You niggas know what I mean. I feel like flow.
Yo, what's up, nigga? Gotta say something. So how much you been you just last night, man?
So, I got into Korean music in the early thousands. Oh, by the way, I want to say for the N-word, I don't like the N-word. I don't use the N-word. I think the N-word is very disgusting, and that is my opinion. You got the N-I-G-G-E-R version, and you got the N-I-G-G-A version. The N-I-G-G-A version means like homeboy, my brother, my sister, whatever, a term for endearment. The N-I-G-G-E-R version is, of course, from back in the slave times and all that brutality, and that word was used against African Americans or Africans, or anyone else that was a minority back in the day. The N-I-G-G-A version, you hear it in hip-hop and rap music and everything, blah, 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 blah. But during Korean music, especially K-pop in the 90s and early thousands, the term, the N-word, was being thrown around in music, believe it or not. Now, when I got into Korean music during the early thousands, I listened to a lot of 90s K-pop, 90s Korean hip-hop. Personally, I thought it was funny. Like, I always laughed. And every time I introduced Korean music to my friends or like strangers, everyone's cracking up like, did blah 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 just say that? Did this guy from Shinhwa just say the N-word? Like, what is going on? And believe it or not, Shinhwa, H.O.T, the other clique, there were a lot of boy groups. The whole crew of probably YG one time and everything, they were the biggest offenders to use the N-word in a lot of their songs. And they weren't using the N-word towards black people. They were actually calling each other the N-word. Like, yo, whoa, my N, this, my... I don't like saying the word, so sorry, I can't really say the whole word for the example. I had a feeling that some of you guys gotta know what you're talking about, because half of the Korean famous artists were Korean American. Like, they were from Jersey or they were from California. And Eric from Shinhwa, I'm sorry, Shinhwa, I gotta call you out on this because you use the N-word all the time. Eric was a Korean American. He's from California, so he was like throwing N-word around in t.o.p, for example. He doesn't actually say it anymore. And then you had like half of YG artists was from Jersey. So here's my opinion on K-pop and the usage of the N-word. Number one, I think the majority, a lot of them, first ones, the ones that mimicked Western hip-hop and rap culture. They saw Tupac and Biggie and P. Diddy and all of them saying the N-word, calling each other the N-word, and they think that's cool. They're like, yo, this is part of, I'm a rapper, I can use it. It means my homeboy, it means brother, it means my friend. So they think, okay, I can say the N-word, I can use the N-word in my songs because I was inspired, and they're mimicking Western world of rap music, and they don't know any better. Especially if they grew up in South Korea their whole life, and then they grew up with rap music from America. They're confused and they don't know, and they didn't get the proper education of the N-word. So forgiven. I have no qualms about that. Like, that's why I find it funny, because I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. That's the first. Second, I think so you got that mindset of they don't know any better. Now the other mindset is they're Korean American. Did they grow up in the hood? the ghetto, the urban environment, or the suburbs of the United States, and then it came over here to get famous, and that was the N-word part of their vocabulary before they got famous in South Korea. Now you got that section. So you do have the Korean American that came from the hood, or they grew up in that type of environment where the N-word was part of their vocabulary. So it's just like, and it's coming out naturally, even though, because they probably hung around people where they can say the N-word and they call it, it's really complicated. So you got that set. So you got the set, like, the native Koreans that don't know any better. Then you got the set Korean American, they know better, and they grew up in that environment where they have the black past, or whatever they call it. Now you got the other set, the ones that know they're from America or Europe or whatever, and they know that it's wrong to say, and they did not grow up in that environment. So you got the Koreans that they're from America, they grew up in the suburbs, they don't know anything about that thug life, whatever they're rapping about. They don't know what they're talking about. So they're throwing it around, they think they're gangster, they think they're cool, and they're just straight up ignorant. You got the ignorant people. So basically, I categorize this 3 sections. Ones that don't know any better, and they're mimicking what they see, the Korean artists. So you got the Korean singers that mimic what they see. They're from country, South Korea, whatever. Straight up suburb. Korean American singer that grew up in the hood, that came to South Korea, made it big, but still got the N-word coming out because that was their vocabulary. That was part of their environment. Third, the one that came from America that probably did not grow up in that environment, that couldn't get away with the N-word, but you come to South Korea to get famous and you're throwing the N-word around like you can, and you know that you're wrong. But back in early Korean music, 90s and everything, the N-word was part of Korean music, especially with Korean rappers and boy bands. And boy bands, they're using it. As of today, if you're new to Korean music and you just got into Korean music, you're not gonna hear the N-word. It's been, because K-pop has been globalized and worldwide, and everyone knows, and they know black people are listening to this stuff. So that N-word has been cut out, and then more people are getting educated about the N-word, I'm assuming, because Eric is from Shinhwa, since I'm a Shinhwa fan. He's Korean American. I really don't know his background. He did use the N-word a lot, and apparently Shinhwa altogether used the N-word. I don't know if Eric grew up in the suburbs or he grew up around environments where there was a lot of African Americans. I have no idea where he. But if you grew up in an environment where the N-word is part of the vocabulary, is like normal. You're white or Spanish, you're Asian, and you grew up where the N-word is acceptable, and you're around black people, apparently it's okay for you to say it. It's so hard to explain if you're not black and you're watching this video and you're like, wait, what? You can say the N-word if you were. It's about environment. It's complicated. It's a whole history on it. Look it up yourselves, research. But remember, it's the N-I-G-G-A version, and I'm gonna just say it so y'all can be clear. Whoever is confused, nigga is the homeboy term, and nigger is the hideous term of ignorance and evil. So, I am not up in arms about early Korean music with the N-word. I always found it funny. People I introduced K-pop back in the day, they're like, yo, did this dude just say the N-word? What? Are they for real? Are they from the United States? Wait, where are they from? Or did they just, are they copying the rappers from our video? right now, as of now, Shinhwa does not. Eric from Shinhwa took out the N word from T.O.P. I think, yeah, globalization of K-pop, and Eric has to be careful because people, other people might get offended. I'm not offended because I don't care anymore. I mean, good thing he took it out. Stupid. Anyway, thank you. What's your opinion on the N-word in K-pop, and are you like, what? And if you want to really hear them saying that N-word, check out some old school K-pop, the ones that I grew up with, because it was funny. Well, not funny if you're sensitive. Thank you for watching.